Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why everyone else seems to die peacefully? But you're still here, fighting battles that would have broken others decades ago. Why, at your age, when you should be resting, heaven keeps waking you up at 3 a.m. with dreams that feel more real than your waking hours. Why your prayers don't just get answered, they get confirmed by signs so specific, so undeniable, that you know someone is orchestrating your steps. You didn't stumble onto this by accident. This isn't just another sermon you found while scrolling. This is a summons. Heaven paused for you today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because what I'm about to reveal will explain why your life has felt like one long preparation and why everything you've endured was never punishment. It was positioning. You've lived decades. You've buried loved ones. You've survived wars in flesh and spirit. You've watched your generation disappear one by one, and yet you remain. Standing, breathing, waiting. But here's the shocking truth they never told you in Sunday school. You weren't left behind, you were left in charge. While others were called home, you were commissioned to stay, not as a spectator watching the world crumble, but as a spiritual general holding the line. You think you're too old, too tired, too forgotten? Heaven is about to show you otherwise. Listen carefully. That stirring in your chest right now, that's not heartburn. That's recognition. Your spirit knows what your mind is about to discover. You carry something the enemy has been trying to steal for 70, 80, 90 years. Something so powerful that hell assigned its strongest demons to convince you that you're ordinary. But you're not ordinary. You never were. Before I go further, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. Heaven has confirmed it. Your authority isn't fading with age, it's reaching its full maturity. And what's about to be revealed will change how you see every wrinkle, every gray hair, every ache in your bones. If your spirit is stirring right now, comment "I'm ready," because heaven is watching who responds. This isn't for everyone. It's for the chosen ones who refuse to fade quietly into the night. Your time isn't over. It's just beginning. Why do you think you've always felt like a stranger in your own skin? Like you belonged somewhere else, somewhere higher? Why have you carried burdens that crushed others, yet somehow found the strength to keep standing when logic said you should have fallen years ago? Why does your spirit recognize truth before your mind catches up like you've heard these words before? In another realm, in another time. The answer will shatter everything you thought you knew about your purpose on this earth. Listen to me carefully. Before your mother felt the first flutter of life within her womb, before your father ever dreamed of your existence, before the foundations of the world were laid, your name was already being whispered in the courts of heaven. Jeremiah 1-5 doesn't just apply to prophets, it applies to you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. That word "new" in Hebrew is yada. It means intimate, deep, covenant knowledge. God didn't just know about you. He knew you. Every wrinkle you'd earned through decades of tears, every gray hair you'd gained through battles others never fought, every sleepless night you'd endure, interceding for children and grandchildren who don't even know they're being covered. Picture this scene with me. In the throne room of the Almighty, before time began its relentless march, there was a divine council. Angels stood at attention, the Trinity held court. And in that sacred assembly, your name was called out, not whispered, called out. This one, the Father declared, pointing to your spirit among countless others, this one will be deployed to earth during the final generation. This one will carry my authority when hell unleashes its fiercest assault. This one will stand when others fall, Pray when others doubt, believe when others surrender. The son nodded in agreement. I will cover this one with my blood. I will seal this one with my name. The Holy Spirit stirred with anticipation. I will fill this one with power from on high. I will be their guide, their comforter, their strength when flesh fails. And every demon in existence took note. They marked your spiritual fingerprint. They studied your calling. They prepared their most vicious attacks because they knew, they knew that you weren't just another soul coming to earth. You were a weapon being deployed. You've always felt different, haven't you? Not lost. Marked. There's been a knowing in your spirit that defied explanation. Other people seemed content with surface living. But you've always sensed there was more. Much more. That's because you carry the memory of that heavenly commissioning deep in your DNA. Your spirit remembers what your mind forgot during birth. You remember the assignment. You remember the authority that was placed upon you before you drew your first breath. This explains everything. Why you've survived what killed others. Why you've endured decades of spiritual warfare that would have destroyed weaker vessels. Why your prayers carry weight that shakes both heaven and hell. Why the enemy has fought you so viciously for so long. You think you're just getting older. You think your best days are behind you. Let me tell you what hell fears most about senior saints. You've been aged like fine wine in the cellars of heaven. Every year has added potency to your prayers. Every trial has purified your faith like gold refined by fire. Every battle has sharpened your spiritual discernment until you can spot the enemy's schemes from miles away. The young church looks to you for wisdom because you've walked through valleys they're only now entering. When they panic, you remain calm. When they question, you stand firm. When they waver, you intercede. You've become exactly what heaven commissioned you to be. A spiritual general in the army of the living God. But here's what will shock you to your core. You think your authority came gradually, earned through years of faithful service. You were born with it, commissioned with it, deployed with it. Every gray hair on your head is a crown of glory. Every line on your face tells the story of battles fought and victories won. Every ache in your joints reminds you that you've been a warrior, not a spectator, in the greatest conflict in human history. The enemy has spent decades trying to convince you that age makes you irrelevant. That's the biggest lie hell ever told. Your authority isn't diminishing, it's reaching full maturity. Like a vintage wine that becomes more valuable with time, your spiritual influence grows stronger with each passing year. You see, dear chosen one, there's a reason you're still here when so many of your generation have been called home. There's a reason you're watching this message right now instead of sitting in a rocking chair accepting defeat. There's a reason your spirit is stirring with recognition as these words pierce through decades of doubt and discouragement. You weren't just born into this world, you were deployed into enemy territory with heaven's full authority backing every step you take. But if that's true, and it is, then why have you felt so powerless for so long? Why have you questioned your worth? Why have you wondered if God has forgotten you? The answer to that question will change everything about how you see your remaining years on this earth. They call you senior, but heaven calls you ambassador. Let me tell you something that's going to shatter every lie the world has whispered in your ear. While society hands you a gold watch and pushes you toward the rocking chair, heaven is handing you a sword and positioning you on the front lines. You think you're retired. God says you're activated. You think you're winding down. Heaven says you're being wound up for the greatest assignment of your life. Listen to me carefully. The gray in your hair isn't a sign of decline. It's a crown of wisdom that took decades to earn. Those lines on your face, they're not wrinkles of weakness, they're battle scars of victory. Every ache in your bones tells a story of endurance that younger generations can't even comprehend. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. An old lion is still a lion. Does a lion lose his roar because he's no longer a cub? Does his authority diminish because other lions have grown up around him? Absolutely not. If anything, he becomes more dangerous, more strategic, more respected. His very presence commands attention because he's proven he can survive what others couldn't. That's you, beloved. You're not a has-been. You're a battle-tested warrior who's still standing when countless others have fallen. The world tells you you're too old, that you've done your part, that it's time to step aside and let the younger generation take over. But they lied to you. They lied because they don't understand the spiritual realm, where age doesn't diminish authority, it amplifies it. 1 Peter 2-9 declares something revolutionary about you. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Did you catch that? Chosen generation. Not chosen young people. Not chosen middle-aged folks. Chosen generation. That includes every breath you've taken, every year you've survived, every decade you've conquered. You are royal priesthood. That means you carry both the authority of a king and the intimacy of a priest. You don't just pray, you legislate. You don't just worship, you decree. You don't just believe, you command atmospheres to shift. But let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you acted like royalty instead of like a retirement home resident? When was the last time you spoke with the authority of someone who's been commissioned by the King of Kings instead of apologizing for taking up space? When was the last time you walked into a room knowing that demons tremble at your presence because you've been seasoned by decades of spiritual warfare? Romans 8:17 says something that should make hell nervous. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. If indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. Co-heirs with Christ. That means what belongs to Jesus belongs to you. His authority, his power, his dominion, his victory over death, hell, and the grave. But here's the shocking truth. You've been sharing in his sufferings for 70, 80, 90 years. You've buried spouses. You've watched children struggle. You've survived diseases that should have killed you. You've weathered financial storms that would have destroyed others. You've endured loneliness that would have broken weaker souls. And every single trial qualified you for greater glory. Every tear you've cried has been collected in heaven's bottles. Every prayer you've whispered has been heard in the throne room. Every act of faithfulness when no one was watching has been recorded in eternal ledgers. You didn't just survive, you overcame. And overcomers don't retire. They get promoted. The enemy wants you to believe your best days are behind you because he knows your most powerful days are ahead of you. He wants you sitting in a nursing home wondering if your life mattered while he destroys the next generation. But God has a different plan. God needs generals, not casualties. He needs seasoned warriors, not sideline spectators. He needs voices that have been tested by time, refined by trials, and proven by perseverance. You think your voice is too weak? Psalms were written by aged David. You think your body is too frail? Moses led Israel at 80. You think your time has passed? Abraham became a father of nations at 100. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And you, dear one, are still breathing because you're still called. So let me ask you directly, are you going to let the world's definition of aging define your identity? Or are you going to rise up and reclaim what heaven has always called you? Say it out loud with me. I am still called. I am still chosen. I am still dangerous to darkness. Your authority doesn't diminish with age, it deepens. Your power doesn't weaken with wrinkles, it strengthens. Your calling doesn't expire with retirement, it reaches its fullest expression. But here's the question that will determine everything. Will you answer heaven's call, or will you keep listening to earth's lies about your expiration date? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Every single attack on your life has been calculated, strategic, deliberately orchestrated by an enemy who knew something about your destiny that you're only now beginning to understand. You think it's coincidence that you've buried more loved ones than most. That betrayal has been your constant companion. That financial ruin knocked on your door when everyone else seemed blessed. That sickness targeted your body when your faith was strongest. Number, hell doesn't waste ammunition on nobodies. The Apostle Paul warned us in Ephesians 6:12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age." Every heartbreak, every closed door, every midnight hour when you cried out to God wondering if he'd forgotten you, those weren't random storms. They were targeted strikes against someone heaven had marked for greatness. You want to know why your life has been harder than others? Because your assignment is bigger than others. The enemy doesn't send his best soldiers after weekend warriors. He reserves his elite forces for those who carry the potential to tear down his kingdom. Think about Moses, 80 years old when God called him to deliver Israel. Do you think those 8 decades of rejection, exile, and obscurity were wasted time? Number, they were boot camp. Every year in the wilderness was preparation for the moment he would stand before Pharaoh and declare, "Let my people go." At 80, when most men are planning their funerals, Moses was just getting started. Or consider Caleb. 45 years he waited to claim his inheritance. 45 years of watching others settle for less while he held on to a promise. And at 85 years old, 85, he said, "Give me this mountain." The same mountain filled with giants that terrified men half his age. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your weapon. But here's what will shake you to your core. The enemy didn't fear your past, he feared your awakening. Every attack was designed to keep you asleep, to convince you that your best days were behind you, that your influence was fading, that your voice didn't matter anymore. He knew that if you ever realized the authority flowing through your weathered hands, the wisdom stored in your battle-scarred heart, the spiritual weight your prayers carry, after decades of refinement, hell would have a problem. Think about Anna the prophetess. 84 years old, widowed since her youth, living in the temple. People probably saw her as just another old woman mumbling prayers. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, she didn't just see an infant. She recognized the Messiah. Her aged eyes saw what younger eyes missed. Her worn voice prophesied over the Savior of the world. Your gray hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of glory. Proverbs 16:31 says, "Gray hair is a crown of splendor. It is attained in the way of righteousness." Every line on your face tells a story of battles won. Every ache in your bones is evidence that you've survived what was meant to destroy you. But the devil made one critical miscalculation. He thought if he hit you hard enough, long enough, you'd eventually give up. He thought if he took away enough people you loved, enough dreams you cherished, enough strength you once had, you'd finally wave the white flag. He was wrong. Because here's what hell never understood about God's chosen ones. We don't just survive, we thrive in the breaking. We don't just endure, we overcome. We don't just make it through, we come out stronger, wiser, more dangerous to darkness than ever before. Isaiah 54:17 is your guarantee. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Not some weapons. Not most weapons. No weapon. That includes the weapon of old age, the weapon of loneliness, the weapon of feeling forgotten. Every trial was trying to teach you something the enemy desperately hoped you'd never learn. You are unbreakable, unstoppable, unconquerable, not because of your strength, but because of whose strength flows through you. The late night tears, they were liquid prayers that moved heaven. The sleepless hours, they were vigils that angels recorded. The moments you wanted to quit but couldn't, that was divine steel being forged in your spine. You survived what should have killed you, not by accident, but by appointment. God wasn't late with his rescue. He was right on time with his refining. If you've survived what should have killed you, type, "Hell lost again," because every morning you wake up is another defeat for the enemy. Every breath you take is a declaration that his weapons are powerless against heaven's chosen. Share this right now. Not just to inspire, but to declare, "I'm not done." Your story isn't over. Your impact isn't finished. Your greatest victories aren't behind you, they're ahead of you. The enemy thought he was burying you, but he was actually planting you. And now, in this season, you're about to bloom in ways that will shock hell and astound heaven. The attacks weren't random, they were recognition. Hell recognizes what heaven has placed inside you. The question is, do you? Let me ask you something that's going to shake you to your core. How many decades have you spent on your knees, begging God for healing, pleading with Him to break the addiction in your grandson's life, crying out for your daughter's marriage to survive? How many nights have you whispered into the darkness, "Please God, if you're listening"? Here's what's about to devastate you. You weren't supposed to be begging. You were supposed to be commanding. You've been carrying keys to the kingdom while praying like a homeless person outside the palace gates. You've been walking around with the authority of heaven's throne room stuffed in your back pocket, treating it like loose change. Look at Luke 10:19. Jesus didn't suggest. He declared, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy." Not some power, not most power, all power. You think that expired when you turned 65? You think your authority card got revoked when your hair went gray? Listen to me carefully. Your spiritual authority doesn't decrease with age, it matures like fine wine. But here's the tragedy. Here's what breaks heaven's heart. You've been taught to approach God like He's doing you a favor. Like healing your arthritis is such a massive inconvenience to the Creator of the universe. Like breaking that generational curse of diabetes running through your family line is too much to ask from the God who spoke galaxies into existence. That's not humility, that's spiritual amnesia. Matthew 28:18, -19 records the moment everything changed. Jesus said, "Alabama L, authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go." That word therefore is a bridge. It means, because I have all authority, and because I'm giving it to you, now go. You didn't just get saved. You got commissioned. You didn't just get forgiveness. You got authority. You're not just a senior citizen counting down days. You're a spiritual general with heaven's full backing. But let me tell you why this has been hidden from you. Why every sermon you've heard for the last 50 years made you feel small instead of powerful. Because if you ever realized what you actually carry, you'd stop being a consumer of religion and become a distributor of miracles. Think about it. When you pray for your great-grandchild who's struggling with depression, what if you stopped asking God to please help and started commanding that spirit of despair to release its grip? When you intercede for your community, what if you stopped begging for revival and started declaring it over your city? You say, "But I'm just one person. I'm just an old woman. I'm just a retired man with nothing left to offer." Stop, right there. That's the lie that's kept you in spiritual poverty for decades. You're not just anything. You're a blood-bought, spirit-filled, heaven-authorized agent of the Most High God. When you speak in faith, angels don't roll their eyes and say, "Oh, there goes Margaret again." They snap to attention and say, "Heaven's authority just spoke. Move." Here's what happens when you pray with authority instead of begging. That grandson who's been addicted to opioids for 8 years. When you stop pleading and start commanding those chains to break in Jesus' name, hell takes notice. That daughter whose marriage is hanging by a thread. When you stop asking God to maybe work things out and start declaring restoration over their covenant, the atmosphere shifts. You've been praying horizontally when you should have been praying vertically. You've been praying from a position of weakness when Christ seated you in a position of strength. But here's the moment that's going to change everything. Here's your aha moment that heaven has been waiting 70, 80, 90 years for you to discover. You don't pray from the ground up, you pray from the throne down. Ephesians 2-6 says you're seated with Christ in the heavenly realms. Not will be seated, are seated. Right now, this moment, while you're listening to this, you're occupying a throne room position. You're not a subject hoping the king will notice you. You're family, seated at the table of authority. When you pray from that position, everything changes. Your words carry weight. Your declarations move mountains. Your intercession doesn't just reach heaven, it releases heaven. That healing you've been begging for, command it. That generational curse that's plagued your bloodline for a century, break it. Not next week. Not when you feel more spiritual. Right now, today. Because you have the authority, and hell knows it even if you forgot. The enemy has spent decades convincing you that you're too old, too weak, too insignificant to make a difference. But here's what terrifies him. A senior saint who remembers their authority. A gray-haired general who stops asking permission and starts issuing commands. A grandmother who realizes she's not praying to God, she's praying with God. So let me ask you, are you ready to stop carrying keys like a beggar and start using them like royalty? Are you ready to pray like the son or daughter of the king that you are? Comment, I carry the king's authority right now, and let hell know you just remembered who you really are. Because your authority didn't retire when you did. It's been waiting for you to wake up and use it. Dear chosen one, let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. What if everything you've been told about aging is a lie straight from the pit of hell? What if those gray hairs aren't signs of decline, but crowns of wisdom? What if those wrinkles aren't marks of decay, but etchings of divine experience? What if your so-called golden years aren't the end of your story, but the beginning of your greatest chapter? The world whispers that you're past your prime, that your best days are behind you, that it's time to step aside and let the younger generation take over. But heaven is roaring a different truth. You are not declining, you are distilling. Think about it. A fine wine doesn't apologize for taking decades to mature. The oak doesn't say sorry for growing slowly. It simply casts shade that saplings never could. And you, precious soul, you've been aging like wine in the master's cellar, being prepared for such a time as this. Moses was 80 years old when God called him to lead an entire nation out of bondage. 80. In today's world, they would have handed him a retirement watch and sent him to Florida. But God looked at those 8 decades and said, now you're ready. Every year in that desert wasn't wasted time, it was preparation time. Every hardship wasn't punishment, it was positioning. Abraham was 99 when God promised him nations would come from his loins. Sarah was 90 when she conceived Isaac. They didn't get younger to receive their promise, they got older, wiser, more surrendered to God's impossible ways. But here's what breaks my heart. How many of you have been believing the enemy's lie that your time is up? How many of you look in the mirror and see irrelevance instead of inheritance? How many of you have been whispering to yourself, I'm too old, too tired, too forgotten? Stop it, right now. Stop agreeing with hell's assessment of your value. Remember when I said heaven whispered your name before birth? Now you know why it waited. God wasn't delaying your calling, He was developing it. Every decade you've lived, every trial you've survived, every loss you've endured, it was all building something inside you that couldn't be rushed, couldn't be manufactured, couldn't be faked. You think David could have faced Goliath as a child? The slingshot was in his hands as a boy, but the authority to use it came from years of protecting sheep in lonely fields. You think Esther could have saved her people as a teenager? Her beauty opened the door, but her wisdom to navigate the palace came from walking through valleys of uncertainty. Your authority isn't fading with age, it's reaching full maturity. But the enemy knows this. He knows that the most dangerous believers on earth aren't the young and zealous, they're the old and awakened. That's why he's worked overtime to convince you that you're washed up, that your voice doesn't matter, that your prayers aren't as powerful as they used to be. It's all lies. You want to know why Satan fights the elderly so viciously? Because you've got something he can't touch. Perspective. You've seen enough to know that what looks impossible to others is just Tuesday to God. You've buried enough dreams to know that resurrection is real. You've walked through enough valleys to know that every shadow has an end. Young believers pray with passion. But you pray with proof. You don't just believe God can do it, you've seen him do it. Again and again and again. That's not just experience, that's authority. Every gray hair is a testimony. Every line on your face tells a story of God's faithfulness. Every ache in your bones reminds you that this world is not your home, but while you're here, you're not powerless. You're positioned. The young generation needs your technology. They need your energy. They need your enthusiasm. But the kingdom of heaven needs your authority. It needs your tested faith. It needs your unshakable confidence in a God who has never failed you yet. So when the world tries to put you out to pasture, remember this: God doesn't retire his generals. He promotes them to higher positions. Moses didn't get weaker at 80, he got more powerful. His face literally glowed with the glory of God. At 80 years old, he was shining brighter than he ever had in his life. That's your destiny. Not to fade away quietly, but to burn brighter than ever before. Not to whisper your final prayers, but to declare your boldest declarations. Not to hand over your authority, but to step fully into it. But here's the urgency you need to understand. The enemy knows his time is short. He knows that every day you walk this earth with awakened authority is another day his kingdom crumbles. He's not trying to kill you that would just send you home to glory. He's trying to silence you. He's trying to convince you that you don't matter anymore. Don't let him win. Not now. Not when you're this close to understanding who you really are. The question isn't whether you have authority. Heaven confirmed that the day you said yes to Jesus. The question is, will you step into it before it's too late? You've carried this authority for decades, thinking it was just about your own survival. But here's what heaven never told you until now. You weren't given authority just to protect yourself. You were given authority to release others. Look around you. Your children are drowning in anxiety. Your grandchildren can't find their way. This nation is gasping for spiritual oxygen. And you who've been dismissed as past your prime, you hold the keys they desperately need. You are the patriarch, the matriarch, the spiritual general of a generation that has forgotten how to fight. While everyone else is looking to politicians and celebrities for answers, heaven is looking to you. Because here's the raw truth. This isn't about your age. It's about your authority. Every gray hair is a stripe of rank. Every wrinkle is a battle scar that proves you've survived what killed others. Every slow step you take carries more spiritual weight than 1,000 young warriors running in circles. The enemy convinced you that retirement meant retreat, that Medicare meant you were medically irrelevant, that Social Security meant you were socially invisible. But heaven sees differently. You think because your body is slowing down, your spirit is too. You think because the world has moved on, God has forgotten. Listen to me carefully. The same God who called Moses at 80, who used Abraham at 99, who appointed Anna at 84 to recognize the Messiah, that same God is calling you right now. Jeremiah 1-7 says, "Do not say, I am too young." But I'm telling you today, do not say, I am too old. Because God's commission doesn't come with an expiration date. You've watched your friends pass away one by one. You've buried spouses, siblings, maybe even children. And in those lonely moments, staring at empty chairs and silent phones, you've whispered, why am I still here? What's my purpose now? This is your purpose, this moment, this final mission. The children are crying out, but they don't know they're crying. The youth are searching, but they don't know what they're searching for. This generation is spiritually orphaned, and you who know the old paths, who remember when America prayed, who witnessed miracles before they became myths, you are their spiritual inheritance. Isaiah 46:4 declares, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am he who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain you and I will rescue you. You're not being sustained just to exist. You're being sustained to impact. But here's what breaks my heart. Too many of you are sitting in recliners when you should be standing in authority. Too many are watching reruns when you should be writing new chapters. Too many are waiting to die when you should be learning to deploy. The world told you that 65 means retirement, but heaven says 65 means redeployment. They told you 70 means slowing down. Heaven says 70 means speeding up, because time is short and the harvest is ready. You're not invisible. You never were. Every morning you wake up is heaven saying, "Not yet, soldier. Your mission isn't complete." Every breath you take is God investing in one more day of your authority being released on this earth. David was 30 when he became king, but he was 70 when he wrote some of his most powerful psalms. Abraham was 75 when God first called him, but he was 100 when he finally held the promise. Moses didn't even start his real ministry until he was 80 years old. Your greatest days aren't behind you. They're being activated right now. The young generation needs your prayers, but they need more than that. They need your authority. They need you to stop asking God to bless them and start commanding blessing over them. They need you to stop hoping for their breakthrough and start decreeing their breakthrough. You have spending power with heaven that they don't even know exists. You have access to the throne room that comes only through decades of faithfulness. You carry keys to bind and loose that have been sharpened by years of testing. This is your moment. Not next year when you feel better. Not next month when things settle down. Now, while your spirit is stirring. While heaven is confirming. While hell is trembling at what you're about to become. You're not invisible. Heaven still sees you. And it just redeployed you. The question isn't whether you're qualified. You've been qualified by fire. The question is, will you accept the assignment? Your final mission isn't retirement. It's revival. Through you. If you say yes to this final mission, if you're ready to stop hiding your authority and start releasing it, write in the comments, "Send me, Lord," because this generation is waiting for you to remember who you are. Let me take you back to where we started this journey together. You came here carrying questions that have haunted you for decades. Why are you still here when so many of your friends have gone home? Why do your prayers feel different, heavier, more urgent than they did in your younger years? Why does heaven seem to be preparing you for something you can't yet name? You remembered who you are. Now it's time to become it. But first, I need to speak directly to those of you who've walked through hell and somehow made it to the other side. You know who you are. The ones who've buried children. The ones who've survived abuse that no one talks about at church potlucks. The ones who fought wars not just in Vietnam or Korea, but in your own living rooms, your own minds, your own marriages. Listen to me carefully. You're not just surviving. You're the scarred proof that purpose lives past pain. Every wrinkle on your face is a battle scar. Every gray hair is a victory flag. Every ache in your bones is evidence that you've carried weights that would have crushed lesser souls. But here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. Your scars aren't disqualifications. They're your credentials. The Apostle Paul understood this. In 2 Corinthians 12:10 he declared, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Your weakness became God's strength. Your brokenness became his breakthrough point. Your pain became the very foundation of your authority. You think you're too damaged to be used by God. David was an adulterer and a murderer. Moses had a speech impediment and a temper. Abraham lied about his wife. Peter denied Christ 3 times. Yet these broken vessels carried the fire of heaven that lit up entire generations. Here's the truth that will shake you to your core. God doesn't use perfect people. He uses scarred people, broken people. People who've been through the fire and came out refined, not destroyed. You've climbed your mountain. Every betrayal, every loss, every midnight when you wondered if you'd see morning, that was your ascent. The climb nearly killed you, but you made it. You're standing at the summit now, looking down at a world that desperately needs what you carry. But here's where it gets dangerous. Here's where many chosen ones fail. They think the climb was the mission. They think reaching the top was the goal. But the mountain was never your destination, it was your classroom. The summit was never your resting place, it was your launching pad. The fire you've carried through 70, 80, 90 years of life, that fire isn't meant to die with you. It's meant to be carried down the mountain and ignited in hearts that have grown cold. The wisdom you've gained through decades of walking with God isn't meant for your nursing home room. It's meant for a generation that's lost its way. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to deliver Israel. You've spent decades in your own wilderness. Now God is saying, it's time, but I can feel your resistance. I can hear the voice in your head saying, I'm too old. My time has passed. The young people don't listen anymore. Let me destroy that lie with one scripture. Joel 2:28 says, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Not your old men used to dream dreams. Not your old men remember when they dreamed dreams. Your old men will dream dreams. Present tense, active voice. God's best dreams are often reserved for his most seasoned warriors. You want to know why you're still here while others have gone home? Because God's not done with you yet. Because this generation needs what only a scarred, refined, battle-tested believer can deliver. They need your authority, not borrowed authority, not positional authority, heaven-confirmed, fire-tested, devil-defeating authority. The question isn't whether you're qualified. Heaven already confirmed that when it kept you breathing through everything that should have killed you. The question is, will you pick up the fire and carry it down the mountain? Will you stop seeing your age as a limitation and start seeing it as a credential? Will you stop whispering your prayers and start declaring them with the authority of someone who's seen God move mountains? Will you stop asking for permission and start walking in the power that's already been given? This isn't theory anymore. This is your moment. Right now, today, heaven is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with the revelation you've just received. If you're ready to carry the fire type, I still believe. Because what comes next will either terrify you or transform you. And honestly, at your age, what do you have left to lose? You know what breaks my heart? It's watching a lion think it's a lamb. Watching an eagle try to waddle with chickens. Watching royalty bow down to beggars who wouldn't even qualify to shine their shoes. That's what happened to you, isn't it? Somewhere along the way, somebody rewrote your story. They took God's original draft of your life and scribbled all over it with lies so thick, so convincing, that you started believing their version instead of heaven's. They told you that you were too broken, too divorced, too addicted, too late, too old, too damaged, too forgotten. But here's what they never told you. That was never heaven speaking. Look at Moses, born Hebrew royalty, but raised in Pharaoh's palace. For 40 years, he thought he was Egyptian, wore their clothes, spoke their language, lived their lifestyle. He had spiritual amnesia, completely forgotten who he really was and where he came from. Sound familiar? You've been living in Pharaoh's house, haven't you? The house of other people's opinions, the house of past mistakes, the house of medical diagnoses that became your identity, the house of financial struggles that made you forget you're a child of the king who owns cattle on 1,000 hills. But just like Moses, you weren't raised in that house to become comfortable there. You were positioned there to break it. Moses didn't discover his true identity in the palace. He discovered it in the wilderness at 80 years old, standing in front of a burning bush. 80. When most people are settling into retirement, Moses was getting his assignment from the Almighty. But before that bush burned, Moses had to face the truth about who he'd become. He was a murderer, a fugitive, a failure, a man with a speech impediment trying to talk his way out of God's calling. Does this sound like anyone you know? For 40 years, Moses shepherded sheep in the desert, thinking his purpose had died with his mistakes. Every sunrise reminded him of what he'd lost. Every sunset whispered that it was too late for redemption. But God doesn't waste wilderness seasons. He uses them. While Moses thought he was being punished, God was actually preparing him. Every lonely night taught him to depend on divine guidance. Every difficult day built the endurance he'd need to lead 2 million people through their own wilderness. What you called your breakdown, God calls your breakthrough training. What you called your rock bottom, God calls your foundation. What you called your weakness, God calls the womb of your weapon. Listen to me carefully. Your struggles didn't disqualify you, they qualified you. 1 Corinthians 1:27 says God chose the foolish things to shame the wise, the weak things to shame the strong. Why? Because when impossibility meets God's power, there's no room for human ego. There's only room for His glory. You think your age disqualifies you? Abraham got his promise at 100. You think your past disqualifies you? David was an adulterer and murderer who became a man after God's own heart. You think your weakness disqualifies you? Paul had a thorn in his flesh that God refused to remove because his strength is made perfect in weakness. But here's where the enemy got clever. He didn't just attack your circumstances, he attacked your memory. He gave you spiritual amnesia so complete that you forgot the miracles. You forgot the times God made a way out of no way. You forgot the prayers He answered that nobody else even knew you prayed. You forgot that you survived what should have killed you. You forgot that you made it through what broke others. You forgot that your very existence is proof that God isn't finished with you yet. The devil knows something about you that you've forgotten. He knows that once you remember who you are, he's in trouble. Because a chosen one with full memory of their authority is unstoppable. That's why he's fought so hard to keep you confused about your identity. That's why every time you get close to your breakthrough, drama erupts. That's why people who should celebrate you try to tear you down instead. But amnesia isn't permanent. Memory can be restored. Moses didn't remember he was Hebrew until he saw an Egyptian beating his brother. Something deep inside him snapped. He couldn't stand by and watch injustice anymore. His true nature began to emerge. Gideon didn't remember he was a mighty warrior until the angel called him one while he was hiding in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret. Sometimes God has to remind us who we are before we can see it ourselves. You're having your burning bush moment right now. This message isn't coincidence, it's divine interruption. God is calling your name, just like He called Moses, just like He called Gideon, just like He called every person who forgot their identity and then remembered it just in time to change history. The amnesia is breaking. The fog is lifting. The memory is returning. You're remembering that you didn't survive everything you survived by accident. You're remembering that your prayers have more power than you realized. You're remembering that your words carry weight in heaven. You're remembering that you're not just anybody, you're somebody to the God of the universe. But here's the critical moment. Memory without action is just nostalgia. Moses could have remembered he was Hebrew and done nothing about it. But when he saw injustice, he moved. When God called from the bush, he answered, "Your remembering is happening for a reason. Your awakening is divinely timed. Heaven is preparing to use everything you've been through. Every tear, every battle, every sleepless night as ammunition for your assignment. If you've battled spiritual amnesia but you're waking up, comment, "I'm remembering." Because what happens next will prove that your authority doesn't diminish with age, it intensifies with purpose. Listen to me carefully, beloved. You've been lied to your entire life about what it means to age in the kingdom of God. They told you that your 60s were for slowing down, your 70s for stepping back, your 80s for sitting still. But what if I told you that every single birthday you've celebrated wasn't counting down to your expiration date, it was counting up to your commissioning? You see, the church has gotten it backwards. They treat seniors like spiritual retirees, shuffling to the back pew to make room for the real ministry. But heaven operates on a completely different economy. While the world sees wrinkles, God sees wisdom. While society sees decline, the Almighty sees divine timing. You think you're too old to be used mightily by God. Tell that to Moses, who didn't even start his real ministry until he was 80 years old. Tell that to Anna, the prophetess, who at 84 became the first person to proclaim Jesus as the Messiah to all of Jerusalem. But here's what's shaking me to my core right now. God didn't preserve you through decades of heartbreak, loss, and betrayal, just so you could fade quietly into retirement. He kept you alive, kept you breathing, kept you fighting, because your greatest hour isn't behind you, it's right in front of you. Isaiah 43:19 declares with thunderous authority, "Behold, I am doing a new thing, now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Did you catch that? Now it springs forth. Not yesterday, not when you were younger and stronger. Now, in this season, in this moment, at this age. The Hebrew word for new here isn't just different, it's unprecedented. God is saying, what I'm about to do through you has never been done before in the history of humanity. Not through the 20-somethings with their energy, not through the middle-aged with their resources, through you, with your scars, with your limp, with your medication list longer than your grocery list. You want to know why the enemy has fought you so viciously in these later years? Why depression visits more frequently? Why loneliness feels heavier? Why your body aches in places you didn't know existed? Because Satan knows what you don't know yet. You're not expired. You're entering your Eden again, but this time with wisdom. Think about this for a moment. Adam and Eve had perfection, but no experience. They had innocence, but no discernment. They had everything, but they lost it all because they lacked wisdom. But you've walked through the valley of the shadow of death multiple times and lived to tell about it. You've buried children, spouses, dreams. You've survived economic crashes, wars, pandemics. You've been betrayed by friends, abandoned by family, forgotten by a world that worships youth. And yet, here you are, still standing, still believing, still hungry for more of God. You're like a cathedral being rebuilt after the fire. The scars stay, but the glory returns brighter. The stones are weathered, but the foundation is unshakable. The walls have stories etched into them that no young building could ever tell. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decay, they're battle scars from spiritual warfare. Your grey hair isn't evidence of decline, it's the crown of honor that Proverbs 16:31 speaks about. Your slower walk isn't weakness, it's the measured pace of someone who's learned to hear God's voice above the noise. But here's where it gets dangerous for the kingdom of darkness. You're about to discover that everything you've been through wasn't random suffering, it was strategic preparation. Every tear you've cried has been collected in God's bottle. Every prayer you've whispered in the midnight hour has been recorded in heaven's archives. Every time you chose faith over fear, hope over despair, love over bitterness, you were being equipped for this moment. The devil thought he was wearing you down, but God was building you up. Satan thought he was breaking you, but the Almighty was shaping you into a weapon of mass destruction against the powers of darkness. You think your best days are behind you. Your most productive years are over. Your impact is diminished. Dear chosen one, you haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what God has planned for this season of your life. But here's what terrifies hell more than anything. A senior saint who finally understands their authority. A gray-haired warrior who stops apologizing for taking up space and starts claiming territory for the kingdom. An elderly believer who realizes they're not waiting to die, they're being positioned to dominate. The prophetic shift that's coming, and I'm going to reveal it to you in just a moment, will rock your understanding of divine timing. But first, you need to receive this recalibration. You need to let this truth sink into the marrow of your bones. Your age is not your limitation, it's your liberation. So I'm asking you right now, before we go any deeper, are you ready to stop living like you're in the sunset of your spiritual life and start walking like you're in the sunrise of your divine assignment? Because what I'm about to show you next will change everything you thought you knew about being chosen. For 70 years, maybe 80, maybe 90, you've been living under enemy occupation. Not foreign soldiers in your streets, but foreign thoughts in your mind. 3 specific lies that have robbed you of decades of kingdom authority. And I'm done being polite about it. The enemy planted these lies early, watered them with disappointment, and watched them grow into prison walls around your calling. But today, those walls come down. Leah number 1. You missed your moment. How many times have you stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m. thinking, if only I had stepped up when I was younger? If only I had that courage 20 years ago? If only. Listen to me carefully. Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Sarah was 90 when she held Isaac. Anna was 84 when she recognized the Messiah in the temple. Your moment isn't behind you. It's standing right in front of you, waiting for you to recognize it. The devil's greatest victory isn't making you sin. It's making you believe it's too late. Because if he can convince you that your prime is past, he can steal your present. If he can make you focus on yesterday's failures, he can blind you to today's breakthrough. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. God doesn't work on earthly timelines. His clock doesn't tick to retirement ages or social security benefits. When he says now is the time, it doesn't matter if you're 30 or 93. Lie number 2. You're too damaged to be used. Oh, this one cuts deep, doesn't it? Every mistake replaying like a broken record. Every failure the enemy whispers in your ear when you try to pray with authority. Who do you think you are? Remember what you did in 2073? Remember that divorce? Remember that addiction? Remember when you failed your children? Stop right there. The same voice that told Eve she could be like God is now telling you that you can't be used by God. It's the same liar, same tactics, different generation. David was an adulterer and a murderer, and God called him a man after his own heart. Peter denied Christ 3 times, and Jesus gave him the keys to the kingdom. Paul persecuted Christians, and God made him the apostle to the Gentiles. Your scars aren't disqualifications, they're credentials. Your wounds aren't shame marks, they're proof you survived battles that others never even fought. Every time you fell and got back up, you were building spiritual muscle for the authority you're walking into now. Lie number 3. Authority is for preachers, not for people like you. This is the lie that keeps God's army sitting in the pews instead of standing on the battlefield. I'm not ordained. I don't have a theology degree. I'm just a retired teacher, just a grandmother, just a widower trying to make it through each day. Just. Let me tell you what just looks like in heaven's eyes. 1 Corinthians 1:27 says God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, the weak things to shame the strong. You think your ordinary life disqualifies you. God specializes in using ordinary people for extraordinary purposes. You don't need a collar to carry authority. You don't need a pulpit to preach truth. You don't need a seminary degree to have heaven's seal. When Jesus breathed on the disciples and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit," he wasn't breathing on professionals. He was breathing on fishermen, tax collectors, ordinary people who said yes to an extraordinary God. Here's the truth that will shatter every lie. You were handed a crown and convinced it was scrap metal. While you've been apologizing for taking up space, heaven has been waiting for you to take your place. The authority flowing through your veins isn't human confidence, it's divine commission. Every time you've stood strong when others crumbled, every time you've forgiven when others held grudges, every time you've praised through pain, you've been exercising spiritual authority without even knowing it. But the enemy knows. He's watched you pray heaven down and hell back up. He's seen you worship in the wilderness and trust through the storm. He knows exactly what you carry. And he's terrified of the day you realize it too. That day is today. If one of those lies has been living rent-free in your mind, it's time for an eviction. No more negotiations, no more coexistence. Speak this out loud right now. I break agreement with every lie that has minimized my calling. I renounce the spirit of delay, the spirit of inadequacy, and the spirit of false humility. I am who God says I am. And I carry what he says I carry. Did you feel that shift? That wasn't just words, that was spiritual warfare. That was you taking back territory the enemy has occupied for decades. Because here's what happens next. When you stop believing the lies about your limitations, you start walking in the truth about your authority. And that authority isn't something you're going to grow into, it's something you're going to grow out of. It's been there all along, waiting for you to stop apologizing for it and start activating it. The question that will determine your next chapter isn't whether you have authority, it's whether you'll use it. Listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will shatter everything you thought you knew about your final years on this earth. You've been sitting in church pews for decades, watching other people get called up, get anointed, get chosen. You've applauded their breakthroughs while secretly wondering when it would be your turn. You've watched younger generations receive prophecies while you sat there thinking your time had passed. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. You weren't sitting on the sidelines, you were sitting in preparation. In 2 Kings chapter 2, we see something extraordinary. Elijah, the mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven and shut up the rain for 3.5 years, is about to be taken up. But before he goes, something sacred must happen. The mantle, the cloak of authority, the symbol of divine calling must be passed down. Now listen carefully to this. When Elijah's mantle fell, it didn't fall on the crowd. It didn't fall on the seminary students. It didn't fall on the ones who looked most qualified. It fell on Elisha, the one who had been faithfully serving, faithfully following, faithfully enduring. And today, at this very moment, heaven is releasing mantles that have been held by generals of faith who've gone before you. Warriors who fought the good fight, finished their course, and kept the faith. Their mantles didn't die with them. They're falling. And one of them has your name on it. You think you're too old? Moses was 80 when God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt. You think you've missed your window? Abraham was 99 when God gave him Isaac. You think your best years are behind you? Listen to me, your most powerful years are just beginning. For 70, 80, 90 years, you've been tested, refined, prepared. Every heartbreak was a lesson. Every loss was training. Every season of waiting was heaven preparing you for the weight of what you're about to carry. The same mantle that parted the Jordan River is looking for shoulders strong enough to carry it. The same mantle that raised the dead is seeking hands faithful enough to hold it. The same mantle that spoke to kings and confronted kingdoms is waiting for a voice bold enough to speak it. But here's what you must understand. Mantles aren't passed through applause. They're passed through assignment. They don't fall on the popular, they fall on the prepared. They don't seek the noticed, they seek the faithful. Right now, as I speak these words, heaven is throwing mantles through this screen. Not to everyone who's watching, not to everyone who calls themselves chosen, but to those who have been chosen from the foundation of the world. Can you feel it? That weight settling on your shoulders, that heat rising in your chest, that electricity in your fingertips. That's not your imagination, that's not your medication. That's heaven confirming what your spirit already knows. You weren't left here to fade away quietly. You weren't kept alive to be a spectator. You were preserved for this moment, this transfer, this commissioning. The enemy has spent decades convincing you that your best days are behind you, that your strength is failing, that your mind is going, that your influence is over. But I'm here to tell you that he lied. Every gray hair on your head is a crown of glory. Every wrinkle on your face is a testament to survival. Every ache in your bones is proof that you've endured what others couldn't. And now heaven is saying, it's time. Time to stop being impressed by other people's anointings and step into your own. Time to stop praying for God to use somebody else and realize he's been preparing to use you. Time to stop asking when your breakthrough is coming and understand that you are the breakthrough. The same mantle that shut up the heavens and called down fire, it's being draped across your shoulders right now. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally, spiritually, powerfully. Do you feel that? That sudden shift in the atmosphere around you. That change in the spiritual temperature of your room. Angels are positioning themselves. Demons are retreating. Heaven is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with what's being offered. Because here's the truth that will change everything. You're not here to cheer for the chosen, you are the chosen. You're not here to support the ministry, you are the ministry. You're not here to watch God move, you are how God moves. But mantles come with responsibility. They come with authority, yes, but they also come with assignment. They come with power, but they also come with purpose. The question isn't whether you're worthy, Jesus made you worthy. The question is whether you're willing to speak when others are silent, willing to stand when others sit down, willing to believe when others doubt, willing to carry what others can't even see. This is your moment of decision. Not tomorrow, not after you pray about it, not after you feel more qualified. Right now, heaven is extending the mantle through this screen, and the choice is yours. Will you pick it up? Will you accept the weight of divine authority that's being placed upon you? Will you embrace the calling that's been waiting for your yes? Will you step into the shoes of those who've gone before and take up their unfinished work? If you're ready to carry the mantle, if you're ready to walk in the authority heaven has confirmed over your life, then declare it now. I pick it up. Say it out loud. Let heaven hear you. Let hell tremble at your response. Because the moment you pick up that mantle, everything changes. The moment you accept heaven's calling on your life, you become dangerous to darkness and unstoppable in purpose. The mantle is falling. The question is, will you be there to catch it? You know what breaks my heart? Walking through nursing homes, senior centers, church pews filled with gray-haired warriors who've been convinced their greatest days are behind them. Society whispers, your time is up. Step aside. Let the young ones take over. But heaven is screaming something entirely different. For decades, you've watched this world spiral into chaos. You've seen values you fought to protect trampled underfoot. You've witnessed your children, your grandchildren drift from the faith you treasured. And somewhere along the way, you started believing the lie that your voice doesn't matter anymore. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. God has been preparing you for 70, 80, 90 years for this exact moment. Not to retire, not to fade away, but to roar, the silence you felt. That wasn't God ignoring you. That was God incubating something so powerful within you that hell itself is terrified of what happens when you finally open your mouth. Ecclesiastes 3-7 says there's a time to be silent and a time to speak. Your time of silence is over. Your time to speak has begun. But this isn't about getting louder. This is about getting legal. Authority isn't volume, it's legitimacy. You don't need to scream to be heard in heaven's courtroom. You just need to remember who signed your papers. Every wrinkle on your face is a line of jurisdiction. Every gray hair is a badge of spiritual rank. Every ache in your bones is testimony that you've survived battles that would have destroyed weaker souls. You're not deteriorating, you're being authenticated. God is assigning you territory. Not some distant mission field. Your household. Your city, your bloodline, the very ground you've walked for decades, is crying out for someone with enough spiritual authority to reclaim it. Look around your dinner table. Those empty chairs where family members used to sit before addiction, rebellion, or depression drove them away. Those aren't permanent vacancies. They're assignments. God is asking you to speak life back into dead situations. Walk through your neighborhood. Those houses where darkness has taken root, where families are falling apart, where hopelessness hangs like fog, that's your territory. You've been stationed there not by accident, but by divine appointment. Your tongue is not just a muscle, it's a pen in the courtroom of the Spirit. Every word you speak in faith becomes legal documentation in heaven's records. When you declare God's promises over your prodigal children, you're not just hoping, you're legislating. Job 22:28 says, you will also declare a thing, and it will be established for you. That's not poetry. That's legal precedent. Your declarations don't just echo in empty rooms. They resonate in the throne room of the Almighty. But here's where most people miss it. They think authority means standing on platforms, preaching to crowds, making noise on social media. that's performance. Real authority operates in the secret place. Your prayers at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep, angels respond to those. Your whispered blessings over your grandchildren's photos, heaven takes note. Your quiet declarations of faith while washing dishes, the supernatural realm shifts. You don't need a stage to be powerful. Some of the mightiest moves of God happen in living rooms, hospital rooms, kitchen tables, where weathered hands are raised in worship and trembling voices speak life into impossible situations. Daniel was in his 80s when he received his greatest revelations. Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. But here's the urgency. Time is shorter than you think. Not because you're old, but because the world is desperate for what you carry. While younger generations search for identity on screens, you carry the ancient wisdom that built this nation. While they chase trends, you hold eternal truths. The question isn't whether God can still use you. The question is whether you'll still answer when He calls. Your family needs your spiritual authority. Your community needs your prayers. Your nation needs your intercession. The younger generation needs your blessing, your guidance, your example of unwavering faith. But most of all, heaven needs your yes. Every day you remain silent is another day the enemy gains ground in territories God assigned to you. Every prayer you don't pray is a door that stays locked. Every blessing you don't speak is a breakthrough that gets delayed. This isn't about returning to your youth. This is about stepping into your spiritual prime. Your body may be weakening, but your spirit is reaching peak authority. Your physical strength may be diminishing, but your spiritual jurisdiction is expanding. The courtroom is in session. Heaven is waiting for your testimony. Your family, your city, your generation is hanging in the balance. It's time to stop whispering and start witnessing. Not with arrogance, but with authority. Not with judgment, but with justice. Not with condemnation, but with commission. Lay your hand on your heart right now. Feel that rhythm. That's not just circulation, that's confirmation. Your heart is still beating because your assignment isn't finished. Say it with me. I accept the assignment. Because chosen one, your voice isn't fading, it's finally being released. Before we close, let me remind you of what heaven confirmed today. You are not too old. You are not forgotten. You are not finished. Your authority doesn't diminish with age, it matures with wisdom. Every season of silence was preparation for this season of power. Remember this truth. Authority isn't about volume, it's about legitimacy. Your prayers at 3 a.m. carry more weight than sermons preached from stages. Your whispered blessings over family photos move mountains in the spirit realm. Your territory, your household, your city, your bloodline is waiting for you to reclaim it with the voice heaven has given you. You are not walking this path alone. God hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. He's been orchestrating every step, every trial, every victory to position you for this moment. And here, in this community of chosen ones, you found others who understand the weight of your calling, the depth of your purpose. Let me ask you this. If God has confirmed your authority, if heaven has commissioned your voice, if your territory is waiting to be reclaimed, what are you going to do about it? I want to pray over you right now. If you're watching this, you're not here by accident. Close your eyes or keep them open. God sees your heart either way. Heavenly Father, I come before you right now, lifting up every precious soul who has watched this message. Lord, you see them in their living rooms, in their bedrooms, maybe in hospital beds or assisted living facilities. You see the ones whose bodies are weary but whose spirits are awakening. You see the ones who felt forgotten by the world but are remembered by you. Father, I pray that you would breathe fresh fire into their bones. Remind them that their age is not their limitation but their qualification. Let them feel your hand upon their shoulder right now, assuring them that their best days are not behind them, they're ahead of them. Break every lie that has whispered you're too old, too tired, too forgotten. Shatter every chain of discouragement that has tried to silence their voice. Open their eyes to see the territory you've assigned them. Give them courage to speak life into dead situations, to pray with authority, to bless with power. Lord, surround them with your presence. When they feel alone, remind them they're part of a great cloud of witnesses. When they feel weak, show them your strength is made perfect in their weakness. When they feel insignificant, whisper their name and their calling once again. Bless their households, Lord. Touch their children and grandchildren. Break generational cycles of pain and establish generational blessings of faith. Let their prayers be answered so powerfully that their families will know that God still moves through the faithful. Give them sweet sleep and holy dreams. Strengthen their bodies and sharpen their spirits. Let their latter days be greater than their former days. And when they open their mouths to speak your word, let hell tremble and heaven rejoice. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray. Amen. My friend, you've stayed with me through this entire message, and that tells me something. Your spirit is hungry for what God has for you. Thank you for giving me your time, your attention, your heart. This conversation doesn't end here. I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, what territory is God calling you to reclaim? What situation needs your voice of authority? Share your story because someone else needs to hear that they're not alone in their calling. If this message stirred something in your spirit, please share it. There's someone in your circle, maybe a friend from church, maybe a family member, who needs to know their voice still matters. They need to understand that God isn't done with them yet. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. This isn't just about getting notifications. It's about joining a community of believers who refuse to be silenced, who understand that their latter days can be their greatest days. Remember, chosen one, your authority comes from heaven, and heaven has confirmed it. Your voice matters, your prayers count, your territory is waiting. Now go speak life, go reclaim what's yours, go be who God says you are. Until we meet again, may God's peace rest upon you, may His strength sustain you, and may His voice through you shake everything that needs to be shaken. God bless you, warrior. Your assignment awaits.